thinking about ditching me. No time that turns the world around. 'Cause you know where I'll be found when I come around.
What is up, everybody? It is the very first episode of MMA Old Heads, presented to you by the Bourbon and Bud MMA podcasting universe. Welcome to the first episode of the show. I am your host, Knuckles, aka Dylan. You can find me on Twitter at Knucklestan. I'm pretty sure my Instagram's the same thing, but if not, I'll link it somewhere. Just check my Twitter. I'm sure it's there. But welcome to the show. This is a show where we break down old fights, old fighters, give shine to fighters of the past, fights of the yesteryear, if you will. Fights that maybe like some more casual fans or fans that are getting into MMA that they don't know about. And that's what this is. So I put up a poll on Twitter yesterday, asking everybody which fight they want to see first. The options were Big Nog versus Bob Sapp, um, Frank Shamrock versus Boz Rutan in Pancrase, uh, Fedor versus Crow Cop in Pride, and last but not least, and the fight that I will be covering today because it won the poll, Griffin versus Bonnar, which was the Ultimate Fighter 1 finale. And that's the fight that I'm going to be breaking down. So I just finished the fight about 10 minutes ago or so. And my first takeaway is just what a scrap, man. What a scrap. Let me pull up the information regarding of when it took place and everything else like that. So I can give everybody kind of a little bit of information about that. They fought twice. This was the first fight, by the way, and this is the most important fight. Um, phenomenal fight. It took place. Gosh, it looks like it took place April 9th, 2005. The Ultimate Fighter 1 finale in Las Vegas. I'm sure it took place probably like either at the Mandalay Bay or like at the Red Rocks or something like that in Las Vegas. I'm not sure the location, but both men were fairly young. Bonnar was 28 years old and Griffin was 25. Um, and man, I mean, just to start with how important this fight was to mixed martial arts in general. This is what saved the sport. You know, you could say that the Ultimate Fighter is just a company, and it is, but without this fight, I'm not sure we'd get the sanctioning that we would. I think like I think the sport would still exist, but I think it would be like very minute. It wouldn't be as prolific as it is today, and it's just a testament to how fucking awesome this fight was, how great it was. And again, I watched it again, like I said, about 10 minutes ago or so now, and I just come away and I'm blown away. I've seen it before. I've seen most of these fights that I'm going to be covering. I've seen before. It's just that I'm rewatching them now. I've been watching the sport since about 2004 ish. I was young. I was like 9 years old, something like that, 8 or 9 years old. Got into it from a video game that my friend had. It was a pride fighting video game on Xbox, and then got into Pride. Pride was like the first thing that I watched, but videotapes and stuff like that. But yeah, not to ramble on. I'm kind of hopping subjects, but I'm going to try to keep it streamlined. But basically, this fight's just fucking amazing, man. It was one of the more it was one of the first UFC fights I watched. One of the more popular UFC fights of all time. I don't even know if it's like as popular now because you've got, you know, the McGregor versus Diaz's, McGregor versus Habib, Lesnar versus Mir. Rousey versus Tate, Rousey versus Nunes. I mean, there's a million fights that are probably like more watched than this one, but I think that like legitimately, if you're gonna go show your casual friends a fight, start with this one. Start with Bonnar Griffin or Griffin Bonnar. There's no better place to start than this fight, and I think that, and I'm steadfast in that belief. It is the best fight to get people into the sport uh, by just watching this because it has a little bit of everything. It's a little compared to the sport now, it's a little untechnical. Um, both men gassed really early, but again, found like 3 or 4 wins, which was crazy. Like wins, not wins, but wins. Um, it seemed like they just like would get gas and then found something in themselves to keep going. It was pretty untechnical compared to today's standards. But still phenomenal. I mean, it was a phenomenal fight. It was fun. It was like Yuri versus Glover, but back in the day, and honestly, almost a little more entertaining. I don't know why, but I just find it more entertaining. But let's start breaking it down. So I didn't take any notes. Again, I'm like when I do these, I'm just gonna kind of fresh off the mind, the guests that I might have on in the future. By the way, I'm running this first episode solo, everybody. Sorry that I promised guests, but I'm gonna be running this first episode solo. Because I'm introducing you to the show. And who's better to introduce you than just me? But the to get back to it, I didn't take notes, but still, I think I'm gonna be able to kind of go through the fight. So the first round was just pure slugging. I mean, I know Griffin took him down a couple times, at least once I know, and had some control time. And they both landed amazing shots. Griffin landed a lot of shots. I mean, I don't even know how to like break it down. Besides that, it was just pure slugfest. It was insane. They both seemed to be gassed by the end of the first. I know they were both looking at the clock. But it seemed that Bonnar or not Bonnar, sorry, Griffin was getting the better exchanges in that round. I think for certain. I think the takedown also scored him the round. Um, but Bonnar was landing counters very nicely and jab. Like Bonnar's jab was very underrated even throughout the whole fight, but like it was very underrated. It was very solid. Another 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 point is Bonnar's takedown defense was not great. Uh, and it showed. And I was like watching it, and I was like, I don't remember it being so not good. So then we started the second round. And Bonnar kept landing very nice jabs, very nice counters, and it seemed like he was getting the better of the exchanges. I think Griffin got him down once, but couldn't hold him down. And Bonnar just seemed to be landing the better shots. But by the end of the round, I remember Bonnar was heaving and looking up at the clock, and Griffin was also tired. Again, he just kept coming back and like finding more energy, and it was insane. And that was one thing I took away from the fight. I was like, man, this like Griffin is just he's a dog, dude. Like he was tired. You could tell he's tired, but he didn't give a fuck. He was like, I'm gonna find energy from somewhere and put it in me, man. That's what he's taking the energy from the crowd or something. Again, because I remember the fight started, that crowd was dead silent. And like a lot of crowds are pretty quiet, but like that crowd was dead silent. Usually like in crowds, even smaller arenas, you hear chatter, you hear people, yelling like fuck, let's go, shit like that. This fight, there was nothing. And again, a lot of these people probably didn't even know what UFC was, MMA was, Ultimate Fighting Championship, all that, probably didn't know what it was. So, and then by the like end of the second round, that crowd was erupting, insane, insane. Not like comparable to like Australia or some other arenas, but it was great, especially for like the day and age that it was in. They went berserk, and it's amazing to see. Like I love going back and seeing this. It's not comparable to like Pride. Pride was just through the roof. It was a different atmosphere. The Saitama Super Arena is just, and again, we'll cover future episodes. plenty of pride, plenty of pride. Sorry, I keep tripping over my words. I'm gonna try not to do that, but I've been drinking a little bit, and that's part of the bourbon and bud space. So we like a little bit of drinky drink. Um, so going into the second round or going into the third round, I thought it was tied 50-50. I might be wrong. Hell, I never read the official judges scorecard, so I don't know if Bonnar, because I know well, we'll go into the official cards later, but like, let's just say I know that at least they won a round apiece. So I had it 50-50 going in the third round, and I will say Griffin came out the aggressor the whole entire round. I think again he like took him down maybe like once. And then he tried shooting a couple more times maybe, but it was really sloppy. Couldn't finish the takedown. But to me, the whole time, the shots seemed like they were landing were Bonnar's counters, his counter jab. And it seemed to be sticking. Like it was just he would pop it, and I would see Forrest's head rock back, and watching that. I don't know. Again, I haven't watched this fight in like 6 years, 7 years, something like that. It's been a long time. And when you watch so many fights on a almost daily basis, I watch fights every single day probably. Um, I have a hard time remembering everything. So like I didn't remember this fight being this close. And at the end of it, people can call me crazy, people can call me insane, but like I almost scored it for Bonner because I thought the shots that he landed were more effective. The Forrest, depending on the scoring criteria you're going off of, which based off of old criteria, like yeah, he probably definitely won octagon aggression. He was moving forward, kept moving forward, kept moving forward. Um, but I feel I don't know. Like looking at it now, Bonner just kept popping that jab out and hitting Forrest. And I haven't looked at the total strike numbers and statistics, but man, like I wouldn't. It could go either way. Like let's just say that, and I'm not mad at the score because again, Forrest Griffin. Anybody that knows me, like my friends from where I'm from, that know me, know what I watch. Forrest Griffin was my first favorite fighter of all time. Well, second first favorite fighter. Mirko Cro Cop was my first. Um, so to say that Forrest being my first favorite fighter or one of my first favorite fighters of all time, and like saying that he could have lost that fight, like there was very good potential that he, depending on the judges that were there that night, could have lost that fight. You give it modern MMA scoring criteria and modern MMA judges, I wouldn't be surprised if Stephan Bonnar walked away with that fight. But I think either way, no matter who won that fight, it still transformed the sport because people were texting people. I've read all the stories. People were texting people or not texting, calling, whatever. That was old days. I mean, texting was still existed, but people were calling people like, yo, you fucking see this shit on, I think it was on Spike TV at that time. Like, you see this shit? This shit's fucking crazy. These two guys are slugging it. Because I remember it was like, I think it was after the first round, people were going fucking nuts. And that's when the ratings started raising. And then the end result, you know, Forrest Griffin won 29-28, and the sport blew up. And again, we wouldn't be sitting here probably having this discussion. I wouldn't be doing this if that fight didn't happen. So that's why this fight is so special. Like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like this fight is so fucking important, and I don't think very many more casual fans or people realize about this sport is how fucking important this fight was and how amazing the sport is. And if you want to get into the sport, watch this fucking fight. That's what got the world into this fight. Like people always talk about what fight would you show your friends, your casual friends to get them into MMA? I hear people say, you know, Lawler McDonald 2, Lawler Condit, um, McGregor Diaz, McGregor Habib. I've even heard uh, Yuri and Glover, uh, Robert Whitaker and Romero, both fights. I mean, like I've heard a litany of fights, but like legitimately, this was the fight that got casuals into MMA. By casuals, I mean everybody. everybody because nobody knew what it was. And this is what got them into it. And it's fucking awesome. It's great. This fight is amazing. I highly recommend everybody to watch it. I know I probably didn't break it down the greatest because again, I'm not a martial artist. I have very, very basic training. All I know is that the discipline that they used was not was not huge. They were just fucking swinging, dude. I mean, Forrest had really nice trips. I will say Forrest's trips were nice. Stephen Bonnar's takedown defense is not great, but again, Forrest kind of snuck in some trips. I think and obviously in today's modern age with MMA, I don't know if those would work, but it is what it was back then, and it worked. And Stephen Bonnar didn't see him again. Forrest couldn't hold him down, so that's a testament to Stephen Bonnar's ability to get up from takedowns. So, um, I mean, if you just want to see two dudes swing gloves at each other and tore their heart out. And man, it's crazy. This fight is so important to everything. 2005, April 9th, 2005 changed the world in MMA. And I think everybody needs to go watch this fight. I've said it a million times. This fight was fucking amazing. Like I remember watching Cage Side Reaction, and I saw it on here, and I remember even back in the day watching Cage Side Reaction of like Dana White, the president at the time, was like, "Holy shit, this is fucking happening." Joe Rogan, and again, I don't like watching commentary. This commentary was considerably dog shit, but even Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg were like, "God damn, like this is something special." Like Mike Goldberg still had the Mike Goldberg thing that he does, like, oh, like, you want to be a rock star, the shit that he said during the Ronda fight. But it was still great. Like the only downside of this whole fight was if you have the commentary on, because I feel like every single shot that landed, um, Rogan was like, oh, he's rocked. Like was like, oh, he rocked him. But you're gonna have that, because it was the old days. But I like turning the commentary off. I watched it with the commentary. I'll probably rewatch with the commentary off. Um, but I think my final score, I think I give it. I think I lean Bonner is fucking crazy probably. Um, I'm gonna rewatch it again with the sound off. And again, I've been drinking a bit because it's the Bourbon and Bud MMA podcast, and that's what we do. But it's the old MMA Old Heads part of the Bourbon and Bud MMA podcasting network universe, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I lean Bonner. The crisp jab was there the whole time, and it was doing more damage. And actually, based off of scoring criteria nowadays, Bonner would have won because for whatever reason, damage holds king, and the way that judges score damage in today's MMA is who wears it on their face. Forrest Griffin could have had like way more scar tissue on his face than Stephen Bonner, and that's probably why he got cut up. And again, he had a cut on the Ultimate Fighter that year above, I think it was his left or his right eye. And like the dude's been, like you can tell the dude's got scar tissue on his face, so he's going to open up a little bit more. It's like Nate Diaz. But in modern MMA, Stephen Bonner probably would have won that because of Forrest Griffin's damage on his face. So it's crazy to think about. But again, I think the outcome would have been the same. I think no matter who won, um, it still would have blown up because the fight was fucking phenomenal. Man, I mean, it, like Bruce Buffer said it after the fight, and I know they told him to announce that it's all scripted, whatever, like or like they told him after the fact, like this is the greatest fight you've ever witnessed inside the octagon. I don't think that's a lie. At that point in time, I don't think that's a lie. Um, and looking at it again, I haven't watched it in forever. Like I think I said 6 or 7 years, whatever, 5, 6 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. I would say it's for sure in my top five. Um, and I'm gonna say it might be like top two or three. Like there's one that I know I hold above it, and it's for me personally, and it's Lawler versus McDonald 2 is the greatest fight of all time. Bar none. I don't think there's a fight that's close to it. Um, if you think differently, argue with the wall because you're not going to argue with me. Lawler versus McDonald 2, greatest fight of all time, which we will cover that on Old Heads one day. Um, even though it's not like a super old fight, it's still like old fight. It's in the Hall of Fame now, or it's going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, but getting on a tangent here, but yeah, I think Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar is a top five fight of all time in my book. Um, Easily, I think it should be, and if it's number one, like in the world, not just me, but in the world, number one of all time, I wouldn't be mad about it because of the significance it held, the fight itself. I mean, these dudes just swung for 3 rounds and they were dog shit tired, bloodied, battered, and they brought the world into this sphere of fighting. So I can't be mad about it. My overall score, so I'm gonna rate it out of 10. I'm gonna do the old Dave Portnoy score, like how he rates pizza, but I'm gonna rate fights. And I'm gonna be kind of a little bit how he is a little bit more particular about how I score. And I'm gonna give this fight on the scale. I'm gonna say it's a 9 even. It's not a 10. A 10 is a perfect fight, and to this point in time, there's nothing that gets that, but there's some that might be closer. I'm gonna have to again, we're gonna go through. I don't care if I get one viewer or 1,000 or one fucking million. I'm gonna do this show because maybe I like hearing myself talk, but I love talking about fights and I love breaking them down. And I think once I get guests on, there's going to be a different dynamic where we can bounce off of each other. So, for everybody watching this one, thank you guys. Thank you, dude. Fucking thank you so much for your support. Um, I love doing this. I love watching fights. Um, and what a better fight to start off on than Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar. Tough one finale, June or April 9th, 2005. The fight that sparked the fucking sport into what it is today. You can talk about McGregor mania, you can talk about Lesnar, you can talk about Ronda. This was the fight that brought this shit into the main sphere. So, I mean, big thank you to Forrest Griffin. Rest in peace, the American Psycho Stephan Bonnar. Um, to touch on that too, there's multitudes of the show that we're going to touch on the after careers of these fighters, right? There's more fights that I'm sure we'll touch on with these fighters, but Forrest Griffin went on to become the champion of the world, beat Shogun Rua in like one of the craziest upsets of all time. Submitted Shogun Rua via rear naked choke, I think third round towards the end of the fight. Submitted him, ran across the octagon, just pouring his soul out. And he fell to the ground and he hit the canvas, face just bloodied as shit, just like in this fight. And not too long after that, beat Rampage Jackson for the title. Amazing stuff. Stephan Bonnar went out there. He had some fights. He had good fights. He had bad fights. And I think his final fight that I remember, I might be wrong, but I think it's his final fight of all time. I'm pretty certain Stephan Bonnar's final fight was Anderson Silva. No, I'm wrong. It was Tito Ortiz, just right after the Anderson Silva fight. Actually, not right after. It was quite a bit after. It was about 2 years. So his final fight in the UFC was Anderson Silva. He got body kick or knee to the body and then punches. I remember that. And then he fought Tito Ortiz to a split decision loss. I didn't watch that fight, so I don't know if it was like one side or the other. But it was in Bellator, which Bellator does those kind of fights. But all I'm gonna say is rest in peace, Stephan Bonnar. Um, Sad shit what happened to him. I could argue all day about fighter pension, fighter pay, fighter insurance, fighter, all that. The shit that they go through and how a lot of them are tossed to the side after their career is done. It's just shitty, man. But rest in peace, Stephen Bonnar. Um, always prayers for his family. Always good vibes to his family. Good vibes to anybody involved in that situation. It was just, not too long ago. So shitty deal. But we move on. So anyway, this was a short one because again, I didn't have a guest. I didn't have somebody break it down, but a fucking phenomenal fight, slugfest. I don't have a ton to say about it. I didn't break it down as much as I probably could have, but like fucking all 3 rounds were just action, no lulls. They were always throwing. They were tired and they were throwing, and it was just phenomenal. And like, I think you guys need to watch it. Um, Stay tuned. I'm gonna have a guest on the next episode. It might be a fighter, might be just a friend, it might just be somebody that's not even watched the sport. Who knows? But I'm willing to bring in any dynamic, and that's kind of what this show is about: is teaching people that don't know about MMA fights that they need to watch. And I'll get a little more technical as we go on. I'll learn a little bit more. Obviously, like I know some techniques. I'm not completely, brain dead to the sport, but I've been watching it for a while, so I should know some shit. But I just kind of want to record a quick episode, get everybody introduced, and tell you guys thank you so fucking much. And I'll probably do another breakdown of this episode in the future where I can like really sit down with somebody else and watch this shit. And hell, I might do watch alongs and then break down. So thank you guys so much. Again, this is Knuckles, aka Dylan, for anybody else that wants to know. Excuse me, sorry, I got a little bit of burping coming up. I apologize. But you guys can follow me on Twitter at Knuckles_Stan, all lowercase. And then on Instagram, I think it's Dylan, aka Knuckles, is my name. I don't know I think it's like at DYLBEAU 94. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's the at on Instagram. I don't post a whole lot on there. I'm more active on Twitter. Facebook friends, you know where to find me. But more than anything, follow Bourbon and Bud MMA on Twitter. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. We're on all sorts of shit. And that's the awesome thing about podcasts. They get uploaded everywhere. I'm about to look up our Twitter so I can tell you exactly what it is, because I want everybody to follow it because it's important. But it's at Bourbon and Bud, at capital B Bourbon and capital B Bud. So at Bourbon and Bud on Twitter. Bourbon and Bud MMA is our podcast. Again, you can find us on pretty much any streaming platform. We love the support. More is going to come out, and catch me on the next one. It'll be a lot better. I have a guest. We'll break it down. It'll be a little bit longer. And stay tuned because the next episode is going to be Fedor versus Crow Cop. So stay tuned, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Thank you so much. Knuckles out. Appreciate it.
Well, don't get lonely now. And try your white eyes. I'm just moving for the moment. Stays in my back, got the time yet. So uptight, you've been thinking about ditching me. No time that turns the world around. 'Cause you know where I'll be found when I come around.